Greg thinks people are watching his life, like it's a secret TV show. Maybe everyone he knows is a robot? Which reminds Greg, he thinks houseflies are secretly alien cameras. This is a weird opening monologue. Was Greg always this unfocused?
Argofont Book Review, Argofont Book Review.
Getting back to watching stuff, Mom says Greg's grandma is watching him from heaven, which sounds nice, but must not be a whole lot of fun for her. Imagine spending your afterlife watching bratty kids you barely knew. Growing up, Greg was in a group of kids who couldn't pronounce the letter R. The group was called the Champs, so they felt great about themselves. Greg thinks that's as bad as giving a big trophy to the one kid on Manny's soccer team who put grass in his belly button all season. Careful, Greg, you didn't do that much better when you played soccer. Greg buys a bunch of Spine Ticklers books, an obvious parody of the Goosebumps series. One book is about a guy waking up in the year 3000, while another is about a guy growing a tail. Greg puts way too much thought into all the possible benefits and drawbacks of those situations. It's weird for him to spend 5 pages talking about if I had a tail, but I'm sure my Goosebumps book reviews have observations which are just as weird. The kids at school try to resurrect a cheese touch from book 1 with other types of food. I would love the pizza touch, that sounds delicious. My version of the book had a typo which says there's a roast beef touch. I think that typo might be funnier than the idea of scary roast beef. The school does a balloon brigade where they let balloons loose to see whose balloon goes the farthest. Most of the balloons get stuck on a cell phone tower. A lonesome boy named Maddox finds Greg's balloon. Maddox has never seen video games before, and he has a ton of Legos. The friendship ends when he thinks Greg stole a piece of Lego on purpose, when it was the tiniest possible piece stuck on his arm. Greg wins a jar of candy in the balloon brigade, but the pig eats it all. The pig gets sick and throws up, which makes Greg throw up. The pig throws up again in front of Mom, and this section is really gross. Mom is unhappy that Greg lies so much, like the time he made up a story about a bully to get out of eating apples for lunch. The truth came out when they met a boy who looked just like Greg's fictional bully. Greg lists the many times Roderick lied to him. Roderick lied about turning invisible, growing a money tree, sleepwalking, using the stairs, growing a second pair of legs, and being haunted by George Washington's ghost if you burp inside. At this point, Greg should not believe anything Roderick says. Greg visits Mom's college, where a girl mistakes him for a child genius. No, she's thinking of Fru from the previous book. She asks Greg for tutoring help. Greg puts a ton of effort into memorizing her textbook so he can impress her. He's disappointed to learn she has a boyfriend who's not in middle school. Greg wants to join band so he can get invited to a Halloween party. He doesn't play any instruments, that's the problem. He used to take piano lessons, but he never bothered to practice. Eventually, the music teacher gave up on teaching him anything. Greg is just as lazy when learning a new instrument. He picks the French horn because it looks easy. When it's not, he gives up immediately. He plays online videos of the French horn to make it sound like he's practicing in his room. The whole thing is a waste of effort because he's not invited to the Halloween party. Rowley is invited. Greg invites himself by forcing Rowley to wear a 2-person costume. But Rowley wanted to be a nice witch for Halloween. Instead of dropping Greg off, Mom takes control of the party. She forces the middle schoolers to play kiddie Halloween games. It ends up being a huge success. All the girls think Greg's mom is the coolest. I'm sad the story ends there. Greg's mom becomes more popular than him. Feels like a premise for comedy gold. Greg continues to pretend to know how to play the French horn. At a school concert, he accidentally locks himself in a room and rips his pants. Greg asks Rowley to use a marker to color in his underwear, which is so gross. He's basically asking Rowley to draw on his butt. Greg finds a bunch of gummy worms. He scares Rowley with one, which gives him the idea to make a scary movie about worms. I read that Goosebumps book. Greg's movie is hilariously bad, since Rowley is the only actor and he's afraid of everything. Rowley ends up stuck in a tree in a bathing suit and towel. He becomes a minor local celebrity and goes on various TV shows. I bet Rowley used his catchphrase, Zooey Mama, several times. The end. Post-book follow-up. It was hard to summarize this book because the plot's a little confusing. It jumps around a lot. Most of the stories change topics partway through. Like Greg starts talking about going to the book fair and ends up talking about the downsides of freezing yourself for a century. A stricter editor probably would have stepped in and stopped the story before it got to that point. The more rambling, aimless stories felt like filler, and even the more purposeful stories had occasional 1 to 2 page filler moments. I feel a little bad for the book's advertising team because they didn't seem to know what to focus on. The title page features Maddox, but he's not a major character. He's there for 14 pages. The back page summary builds up the movie-making story as the major event of the book, when it's literally the last story. And of course, they couldn't focus on the title to advertise the book, because the title is unrelated. There was an attempt to center the book around Halloween and spooky stuff, but I don't think it was successful. The book might be better if it doubled down on the Halloween theme. As it is, this book is kind of bad. I wouldn't be surprised to learn that many of these stories were originally rejected stories left over from previous books. I don't know what went wrong with this book, considering the last book was so good. Hopefully it's a one-time problem and the series will go back to its usual level of quality in the next entry. If you're not a completionist, I would recommend skipping this book. It wasn't that great. I give Diary of a Wimpy Kid number 11, Double Down, a 3 out of 10.